It's June 1998, and France is hosting the biggest sporting event in its history. With the largest number of participating countries ever in a World Cup, France is ready for the biggest party in football. But behind the footballing glamour, France was hiding a darker reality. As the most racially troubled country in Europe, France was divided by the question of immigration. Jean-Marie Le Pen, the leader of the far-right National Front, openly attacked the multiracial makeup of the French national team.
I just think it was cheap talk, you know. France always had been great to welcome people in, always. As long as we were wearing the French shirt, you know, it didn't matter where you're coming from, and everyone was proud to be French.
But what Le Pen was choosing to ignore was that French football had always reflected the country's racial diversity. Many of France's greatest ever players had come from immigrant backgrounds, players like Raymond Kopa and Michel Platini. But even their exuberant talents had not brought footballing glory to France.
The French team was a delight to watch, was a team that played beautifully and entertained the crowds. But there's always been a conflict in French football culture, you know, should we win or should we go out and play brilliantly?
In the 68-year history of the World Cup, the French had never reached the final. An embarrassment for the country that had invented the competition in the first place. But over the course of 33 days in the summer of 1998, the French team are determined to shake off their image as perennial losers. And at the same time, change the nation's understanding of itself and its relationship with its people.
What surprised me was the people in the street. Black, white, brown. I was in the bus right at the back. I turned around and looked behind, and there must have been more than 500 motorbikes following us. It was incredible, really incredible.
Zinedine Zidane and his team were about to turn France's footballing fortunes around and racially unite a divided country. With only days to go before the 1998 World Cup, the French manager, Aimé Jacquet, is a man under pressure. Attacked from all sides, Jacquet has the job of rewriting French football history. But few believe he was the man for the job.
Personne ne croyait à l'équipe de France. Personne.
Nobody believed in the French team. Nobody, I mean it. I went through hell from critics, but also even from the public. Never a quiet day, because often I was getting it from all sides.
J'étais un peu percuté partout.
As the World Cup approached, the national sports paper, L'Équipe, claimed that Jacquet was ill-prepared to lead the national side.
In some ways, Jacquet's philosophy, and this is why L'Équipe took against him, was hard work, defence, possession and safety. But I think as a manager there was a lot more to him than his critics allowed.
But L'Équipe's criticism became personal, and he was vilified less for his technical ability than for his social background.
They said he was somebody from middle of France. He didn't deserve to be the leader for the national team, that he came from the backwards. So what, you have to come from high school to direct a football team?
Jacquet had a vision for the French team which emphasized teamwork above all else.
La gagne, c'est la mentalité, c'est le groupe, c'est la solidarité, c'est la générosité. Hein?
But his master plan also included a leading role for the mercurial midfielder Zinedine Zidane.
Zidane était pour moi le joueur d'exception.
Zidane was out of the ordinary, exceptional. But he didn't have his influence yet. He hadn't yet got his personal aura. He played football to enjoy himself. He had exceptional skills, though he wasn't much of a team player. But when he came into the French squad, he joined other talents who took him onto an international level.
Lui aussi, une dimension internationale.
What he can do with his feet, you know, some people can't even do it with their hands. You know, it's just magical. You know, sometimes when he plays with the ball, it seems like he's dancing.
And the Zidane magic was evident from an early age when he could be seen playing outside his high-rise flat in his hometown of Marseille.
On s'amusait nous aussi à faire notre Coupe du Monde à nous, quoi. Chacun...
We had real fun playing our own World Cup on the Place de la Tartane in the estate where I was brought up, the Castellan.
Avec lesquels ils voulaient jouer. Et voilà, et on passait des moments...
We each had our own team, but at that age you don't think it's going to be a reality.
Réalité.
But reality for Zidane, a second-generation Algerian immigrant, gave him little scope for dreaming. His estate, La Castellane, was notorious as a no-go area. With high unemployment, limited educational opportunities, and a lack of services, it was known as un quartier difficile, a problem area. And its problems were blamed on its immigrant population.
France had a real problem concerning immigration and the integration of immigrant communities into French society. There was a lot of violence, whether it be in rundown estates or posh areas, but the problem was always presented as immigrants. The media suggested that it was coloured people who were causing the country all these problems.
It was not just the media who fueled French discontent. The nationalist politician Jean-Marie Le Pen actually used Jacquet's multiracial team to further inflame the immigration issue.
I think Jean-Marie Le Pen, who's a supreme opportunist, took the right moment to have a kick at the French team as representative of everything that was decadent and rotten about France in the 1990s.
Le Pen claimed it was a sham to call this group of foreigners French.
I think that remark was out of place. All the players who were there didn't ask themselves questions about their origins. They were proud to represent France, and they made every effort so that France could win, regardless of whether they were black or white.
Jacquet's squad was no different to the great French teams of the past. France has always had multicultural national teams. Zinedine Zidane may have been a second-generation Algerian immigrant, but the player he was often compared to was also an immigrant and one of the greatest French players of all time, Raymond Kopa.
I've always considered myself to be French, despite my Polish roots. If I had taken Polish nationality, I wouldn't have been able to be a part of this country. I would have remained a foreigner. Whereas I played a very important role within the country, because I was quickly adopted as the French #1.
Kopa grew up in a mining town in the north of France and, like Zidane 40 years later, escaped the limited prospects of his background by playing football. By the time of the 1958 World Cup in Sweden, Kopa had become a famous international footballer.
Raymond Kopa was an exceptional player for his time. You could pass him the ball knowing he wouldn't lose it. He could dribble and keep the ball and make decisive passes. He was the best player in the world at the time.
Kopa was joined in Sweden by a group of fellow immigrant players.
The French team was a multiracial team. There was Raymond Copa, who was Polish in origin. There was Piantoni, who was Italian in origin. And there was Just Fontaine, who was from Marrakesh, of Spanish and Italian origins.
Although the team were playing in the greatest football competition in the world, there was little interest in them from either the French public or the French press.
In
the beginning, during training, there were only 3 journalists. One from L'Équipe, one from France Football, and one from France Soir. And they would eat with us and train with us because everyone thought that we would be going straight home after the first 3 matches.
But Raymond Copa and the team were determined to prove they could do much better than that. With Copa passing to Just Fontaine in the number 17 shirt, the French tear Paraguay apart in the first of their group games.
I suppose we worked so well because he was able to read exactly what I planned to do. And I was always glad to find him up front.
After winning 7-3 against Paraguay, the Copa-Fontaine partnership provided the few French journalists with stories that hit the headlines back in France as they cruised through their group matches. And France's flamboyant play attracted the description champagne football. As a style, it reflected the philosophy of team manager Albert Bateau.
Bateau, as a manager, was a great believer in style and charisma. And it's an open question whether, to some extent, he was really that concerned with winning, because what he prized above all was a team that played beautifully, played extravagantly, and entertained the crowds. And of course, this went down well with the crowds. There's no reason why it shouldn't.
France took the 1958 tournament by storm, reaching the semi-finals for the first time in their history. But there, they had to face their most formidable opponents to date.
France-Brazil was the climax of our World Cup, since Brazil was considered to be the best team in the world and the favourites to win the World Cup. Not a single team had managed to score against them. We were on a high and came to it without fear. We had nothing to lose, considering they were the best.
Only 2 minutes into the game and the French go a goal down, when Garrincha crosses to Vava to put Brazil ahead.
So they scored at the start because they got through our defence. But then I equalised with a really skillful move, really good.
With Copa as the provider once again, Fontaine scores his 9th goal of the competition. But French celebrations were to be short-lived. In the 35th minute of the game, disaster struck when Jonquet, the French team captain, was injured.
Injured players couldn't be replaced at the time, and the French team were down to 10 men for most of the game. I think Brazil would have been in trouble had we played with 11 players.
Jonquet's injury turned the game as the Brazilians took full advantage. In the 39th minute, Didi puts Brazil into the lead and opens the floodgates. Then a young Pelé, playing in his first World Cup, gets the first of his 3 goals. The Brazilians begin to make the French defence look embarrassing.
We felt that if we stayed back and focused on the defence, we wouldn't score any goals. Well, that was our philosophy anyway. That's how we played, and the public seemed to like it, because they like seeing goals.
The French continued to attack and were rewarded with a consolation goal from Piantoni, making the final score 5-2 to Brazil. France had failed at the penultimate hurdle, despite the fact that Just Fontaine would become the top goalscorer in World Cup history when he brought his tally to 13 in the third-place playoff against Germany, a record that still stands today. Winning matches was to become a rare phenomenon for the French team for the next quarter of a century. Their relative success in 1958 was followed by a long line of failure. With the return to power of President Charles de Gaulle, France began a period of conservatism both off and on the field. Albert Bateau was replaced by Georges Bologna, who instigated a more pragmatic approach to the game.
It was basically a grim affair. It was all about teamwork, defence, moving the ball, passing the ball, but not really daring to do any of the kind of the top end, the high end, the champagne football stuff. As a manager, Boulogne reflected the political culture of the time. The Gaullist values were all about home, caution, what I call the civil servant mentality, which is the safety of mediocrity. The fonctionnaire mentality that's been done like this since 1792, and we're not going to change it now.
Between the late 50s and the early 1980s, France failed to qualify for the World Cup on 3 separate occasions. When they did qualify, they were eliminated in the first round. But in 1981, a new era began in France.
With the election of François Mitterrand, there were a complete change of the moral climate, of the atmosphere, a breeze of liberty, brought to people the feeling that many things could be possible.
A sentiment shared by the new French football manager, Michel Hidalgo, whose preference for stripes extended to the national strip. His approach was a return to the creative force of his mentor, Albert Bateau.
I had a preference for creative players. The team I put together played very quick football. They were very quick thinking and fast moving. It was the type of football that I'd come to love through my experience with Albert Bateau.
Grâce à Albert Bateau.
Mistake by the defender, Kerrick, Verdon is in. That was superbly taken.
Hidalgo was fortunate to have a player in his team who would become a symbol of the new wave in French football, Michel Platini.
We understood each other. We spoke the same language. We both knew the football we needed to play. The passionate football, the street football, the pass football, the knowing how to play football.
You could say that Platini would be a player like you can't find it very often. He was not an athletic football player. You once said you can find 2 or 3 million French people who run faster than me, who jump higher than me, but you couldn't find a single man playing football better than him.
I think we can see not just a trajectory, but a clear parallel between Raymond Kopa and Michel Platini. Both of them come from immigrant families, both of them deeply French in lots of ways, and most French, when they're expressing this gloire, this desire to play at all costs, at top speed, and winning is not the main thing, it's actually playing with great poetry and flair.
Platini became the captain of Hidalgo's new team and was joined by a group of players that once again reflected France's immigration patterns.
The key thing about the Platini team of 1982 was it was a team of immigrants, like the team of 1958. But there was a significant difference. There was a lot of Italians, there were people of Spanish origin, but there was also significant presence from Africa. There was Jean Vion, who was North African, there was Tijana from Mali, and Trésor, who was from the French West Indies. So this was a significant shift.
The 1982 team were all set for the World Cup in Spain. As usual, there was no great interest from the French public, who believed their team was only really capable of losing.
We don't like winners in France. We like people who come second, flamboyant people who make show, but not especially the ones who win. That's the French illness. French people don't win. French people always come second.
Despite the lack of interest, a few French fans did make it to the stadium to watch France's opening game against England. What they witnessed was a disastrous start for France.
Match against England. It was sort of a second Trafalgar for the French. It lasted less than a minute before England scored. And that was an awful match for the French team. The French defense seemed to still be at the restaurant before the match, talking all together, and Brian Robson getting this ball and scoring against Ettori. He was not the best goalkeeper we had in history. It was terrific. It seemed that World Cup had last less than 1 minute for the French team.
Yet despite this early defeat, Platini's team were far from finished.
I'm going to tell you that people were laughing when they were playing against France. You English people were laughing. After that, you weren't laughing so much, though.
It was England who were eliminated, while France steamed ahead with a virtuoso display of all that was best about French football, easing their way into the semi-finals.
And there we were, in the semis. We had all the grandeur of a team with high hopes. We were hoping to be the first ever French team in a World Cup final.
But France's winning streak meant they had to face opposition they all dreaded.
History cannot be forgotten, even many, many years later. There was an edge to that game. There was something about it because it was France and Germany. And it had everything that a good film would have in. It's got plot lines, it's got your heroes, it's got your villains. And I think it's the match which has remained most graphically in the minds of the French people.
After an early goal by the Germans, the scores are levelled with a penalty from Platini. And it's at this point that the real drama begins. Harald Schumacher, the German goalkeeper, begins to take the game personally.
He was very, very aggressive from the start. In a way, I think Schumacher reflected the mood of the German team when they played against France generally. He knew France were playing well and thought a bit of aggression would do the trick.
Worse was to come. In the second half, French midfielder Gengini was replaced by Patrick Battiston. Battiston was to spend a mere 10 minutes on the pitch.
Platini released Battiston, who went for it on his own. The German defence was out of position and Schumacher had to come out. He was clearly beaten. He couldn't get the ball, so he went for the player instead.
monde l'a vu.
Everyone saw it. Both the players and the fans saw what happened. But the referee didn't seem to notice a thing.
The distraught French players run to the aid of their fallen teammate. Schumacher seems unconcerned.
We thought that Patrick had a serious problem, a really serious problem, and we thought that the referee should do something, but he didn't.
Although Battiston was knocked unconscious, lost teeth and had vertebrae broken, no penalty was awarded, no foul given, and Schumacher escapes without even a caution. Michel Hidalgo can't believe what has happened.
We had been the victims of a grave injustice. The match reignited the old Franco-German antagonism that wasn't there before the start of the match.
Schumacher remains unmoved, going as far as to taunt the French fans yet further. But the French team managed to regroup and push the game into extra time. Then a breakthrough comes from Marius Tresor. Six minutes later, Alain Giresse makes the score 3-1.
Même si j'avais 10 ans, je me souviens le but d'Alain Giresse.
Even though I was only 10, I remember Alain Giresse's goal. That's a really clear image for everyone, not only for French people, because I think that image went all the way around the world, because he had an anger and a desire when he scored the goal. When his little arms did this, that's the image that comes out of that World Cup.
Qui ressort de cette Coupe du Monde.
C'est moi qui marque le troisième but, ça fait 3-1, et quand je marque et que...
When I scored our third goal and got the score to 3-1, you see the way I celebrated. You could see that all of us believed we were in the finals of the World Cup.
C'est ce que l'on pense, on est en finale de la Coupe du Monde.
Yet the champagne would have to wait for another day as France allowed the Germans back into the game. 4 minutes after Giresse had scored, Rummenigge for the Germans beat the French defence to bring the score to 3-2.
The competition got very heated. The sun in Seville burns everything it touches, and the competition matched the heat that they're used to in Andalusia. At the same time, we felt the cold of Germany's calculating game.
As a tiring French side desperately tried to hold on, Fischer levelled the score in the 108th minute.
On a continué un petit peu à jouer, alors on a moins...
We should have been a little more calculating and put some thought into staying ahead. But that wasn't really our style.
At full time, the score remains level. The only option, penalty shootout. Platini offers the first penalty to Alain Giresse, who faces French public enemy number 1.
It was a very long distance to travel. It was only 30 or 40 metres, but it felt like kilometres to me.
C'était des kilomètres et des kilomètres pour moi. C'est épuisant.
My nerves were on edge. I was emotionally shattered. I tried not to look at the keeper, but that was really hard. I really didn't want to look at him, considering what he'd done to us during the game.
With the teams all square after 5 penalties, it's time for sudden death. Defender Maxime Bossis steps up for the most important shot of his life. All Germany have to do now is score.
Et ensuite, bon, il y a Horst-Roubesch.
And then comes Horst-Roubesch, all that France hates in Germany. Solid, hulking physical strength against French creativity and technique. And he is the one who delivers the last twist of the knife. And there, a dream collapses.
C'est un rêve qui s'effondre.
Just like the Copa-Fontaine World Cup team of 1958, the French had fallen at the penultimate hurdle, and France is once again relegated to team loser.
Avant le match, j'avais une équipe d'hommes.
Before the match, I had a team of men who, once they put the French shirt on, looked bigger than their real size. After the game, they looked like a team of primary school kids. They were all crying like children in the dressing room. We had to force them to undress and get them into the showers. They were inconsolable.
Hidalgo suffered with his team, but there was less understanding when the players returned to their clubs in France. Many of the team played for Bordeaux, and a young Aimé Jacquet was team manager.
I was furious, absolutely furious, because I was manager at Bordeaux, and I had some of my players in the team. I always said to them, when we have a 2-goal lead, it's a different kind of football. You have to know how to control the game, to stall, to destabilize the opponent. But when psychologically you think that 3-1 up against the best team of the world and you're in control, that's a mistake. It's unthinkable.
Aimé Jacquet was to learn more than most from that ill-fated day in Seville, and many regard the match as the turning point in French football. But it was to take another 16 years of missed opportunities by the French national team before Jacquet was able to put into practice the lessons of Seville. Having been made French team manager in 1994, Jacquet had 4 years to create his ideal team. By the time of the 1998 World Cup, he had developed a side that he believed would change French fortunes.
I was aware how to do my job well, and I was sure that with the resources I had, I was going to achieve something.
Jacquet's confidence was not shared by his team, who worried that they would be the latest additions to France's long line of losers.
On était inquiets. Comment ça va se passer? L'entraînement a été mauvais.
We were apprehensive. We started doubting the training we'd had. It was incredible. I think I've never doubted so much at any other time in my career.
Dans toute ma carrière.
And on the way to their opening World Cup game, the doubts lingered.
I remember when we first played against South Africa in Marseille, the pressure in the bus before we arrived at the game was so high, you have no idea. It was intense.
The match was largely uneventful, if tense for the French, until in the 34th minute, Christophe Dugarry broke the ice. Spurred on by this success and a South African own goal, it is new boy Thierry Henry who scores France's third and his first World Cup goal.
On the spur of a moment, I received the ball and I just chipped the ball over the goalkeeper, and the ball was in. I was pretty happy, more than happy even. My dad was at the stadium, my brother was there. It was just crazy scoring in the World Cup at home in front of the family.
The sense of relief for the French team after their first success could be felt by everyone.
But in the end, it went well for us, in spite of a difficult start to the game. We won it 3-0, and we got back in the changing room feeling stronger.
But for Zidane, the next match against Saudi Arabia would hold less happy memories. The game was to be held in France's newly built World Cup stadium, the Stade de France in Paris. Before the game, Jacquet gave his team some words of caution.
Qualification ce soir.
Ok? Faut être un peu calme, garder sa sérénité, être un peu patient. Attention, n'allons pas prendre un carton rouge.
Saudi Arabia were not expected to give France much of a headache. Thierry Henry scores first, followed by David Trezeguet. France are coasting. But then Jacquet's worst fears come true.
When you see Zidane leaving the pitch and you see Jacquet, don't even notice him. He doesn't even look at him. He's gone, he's gone. He was focusing on the guy who was on the pitch.
Mais dans les vestiaires tout de suite, quand je suis rentré, c'était mince, quoi. Sur le moment, mon expulsion.
When I got back to the dressing room, I felt terrible because I'd let my teammates down and I was going to miss games.
Parce que je vais être sanctionné derrière.
I didn't feel good about it at all.
Je le vis pas bien.
Avec le carton rouge. With Zinedine's red card, that was terrible. Terrible. Because we were losing our best player. What were we going to do? I can tell you that we were very worried. But I did not want to show it.
Mais j'ai pas voulu le montrer.
Even without Zidane, 10-man France were able to overwhelm the Saudis, with Henry powering through to score a third goal. With the final score, 4-0, France had qualified. While the team celebrated and relaxed after the game, they knew that Jacquet's vision for their team was working, with or without the star, Zidane.
Il a aimé.
Il a le sourire facile même pour les imbéciles. Il s'amuse comme jamais.
It's interesting to listen to the accents that are bounding around the dressing room. There's accents from all over the place, different parts of France as well as different parts of the colonies. But what's interesting when you look at the team together, how they function, how they bond, is they're taking the piss out of each other, they're having fun with each other, but they're completely relaxed with this dual identity of being Algerian, being Basque and being French.
The team's next match against Paraguay would be a much sterner test for Jacquet's Zidane-less team. In a nerve-wracking 90 minutes, France experienced their toughest game to date. Would this be the end of their World Cup adventure?
Physically, it was a nightmare. They were playing man-to-man, mark all pitch. Even if you decided to go to the toilet, they were following you, you know? It was a nightmare.
And it was a nightmare which left the French team nervous and clumsy. The French squander chance after chance.
And let me tell you that we started to suffer, really suffer, because we thought, how are we going to score? We tried everything, all the possible ways.
Without the incisiveness of Zidane, France's luck seems to be running out.
We missed a couple of chances with touch wood. It was intense, frustrated.
As extra time approaches, the prospect of a golden goal looms, where the first team to score becomes the sudden death winner. Jacquet's dream is looking remote. But 23 minutes into extra time, and salvation comes from Laurent Blanc, when he becomes the first person to score a golden goal in World Cup history. The team and the crowd go into ecstasy. The French had good reason to celebrate. Not only were they through to the quarter-finals against the Italians, but their playmaker, Zinedine Zidane, was back in the fold. Within minutes, Zidane is reveling in his return to the team with some trademark moves. But after 120 minutes of play and no goals, France and Italy are forced into a penalty shootout. Michel Platini has to relive his own heartbreak in Seville in 1982. Zidane and Roberto Baggio make it all look so easy. But after 5 penalties from the French and 4 from the Italians, it's all up to Luigi Di Biagio.
The moment he hit the crossbar, I didn't realise it had finished, because I was concentrating so hard. I was still in penalty mode, concentrating. Then I saw everyone running towards me. I thought, oh, it's finished. We won. Perfect.
It was like a party, you know. We reached the semi-final and we realized that we were equal to the whole generation, like Platini, when they went to the semi-finals. So we were equal. Whatever happens, it could be only better.
And the party atmosphere on the pitch was becoming infectious, with the country looking again at their national team and at each other.
We couldn't avoid seeing what was going on when we went through the towns and estates on the team bus. Africans, Algerians, Arabs, Moroccans were all at their window with French flags. They were mixing with French people, and everyone was singing together, and everybody had their faces painted in blue, white and red.
As France had never progressed beyond the semi-final in any World Cup competition, the weight of expectation hung heavy on both France and the team as they walked onto the pitch against Croatia. In a testing first half, Croatia proved that they were a team France needed to respect. By half-time, it remained scoreless, and Jacquet's team talk left nothing to the imagination.
Une chance, mais aucune chance, les gars. On est en train de s'annuler toutes nos chances. Pas difficile. Alors où on réagit et on y va, parce qu'il y a une finale au bout, ou vous laissez tomber et vous attendez. Et vous attendez qu'on jette la pièce en l'air. Il n'y a personne qui bouge, personne ne réagit. On est là 10 mecs à mort. Vous avez peur de quoi? Vous avez peur de qui? Peur? Mais vous allez perdre, les gars. Je vous le dis, vous allez perdre. Vous n'avez pas de soucis à vous faire.
1 minute after Jacquet's warning, the unthinkable happened. With the French defence watching the ball rather than the opposition, Davor Suker makes a run into the box. Lilian Thuram, in a rare lapse of concentration, plays Suker onside. But Thuram's error produces a reaction that no one could have expected. 1 minute after Suker's goal, the defender finds himself spearheading a French attack.
The ball comes to me. I saw a player to the side. I saw the blue shirt, like that. Woof! So I hit it towards him. I never thought it would be Thuram. Why would he be there? So he goes and boom, and puts in the first goal. 1-1. Wonderful.
He turns around and takes a few steps towards his teammates. He looks out into the crowd and realises what has just happened to him. He lost consciousness. It's not like he passed out, but he was unconscious with his eyes open. He just didn't know where he was. For about 40 seconds, Thuram didn't know what was going on around him. We were all celebrating, and we hugged him and told him how awesome he was, but he can't remember a thing. It will always be a magical moment for me.
Et c'est un moment pour moi magique.
But Thuram wasn't finished yet. With 2 goals, Thuram amazed not only his teammates, but the whole of France. Croatia never recovered, and France had secured its first opportunity in history to play in a World Cup final.
For one night, if he had gone, to say that he wanted to be president, everyone would have voted for him. That night in France, Lilian Thuram was the king. Anything he wanted that night, he would have had from anyone.
With World Cup glory in sight, it was now time for the real president to follow the lead of the country and join in the celebrations.
I think Chirac is perceived to be by most French people a deeply cynical and opportunistic politician, and it was therefore no surprise whatsoever that somebody demonstrated no interest or knowledge of football at all, put himself around with the team, identified himself with a proletarian sport that he quite evidently despised in any other previous incarnation. It was foul beyond belief.
As the news came through that France was to meet the competition's favourites and 4-time world champions, Brazil, in the final, Aimé Jacquet prepared his team for the match of their lives.
On termine mal. On n'a pas à avoir, je dirais, de complexe face à cette équipe-là. On a, grâce à notre mental, on a toujours renversé des situations. Ce match, il est pour vous. C'est votre match, vous l'avez mérité.
As the team made its way to the Stade de France, the magnitude of the event began to hit the players.
We are going to play in the World Cup final.
Can you believe it? It's a final. Voilà, c'est ça.
But with the team preparing themselves for the most historic day in French football, rumours began to circulate that Brazil's #1 star Ronaldo was unfit to play.
Of course we were aware of what was going on with Ronaldo, but we wanted to play against the real Brazilian team, with Ronaldo carrying the flag. We wanted to see how we measured up to this legendary team. Brazil, for real.
When the two sides finally lined up, there was a palpable sense of expectation. Ronaldo had been deemed fit, and the question everyone was asking was, could France rewrite their history? Could France beat the greatest footballing nation in the world? France had the best of the opening 20 minutes, with their defence allowing no one near the French goal. And then, in the 27th minute, Zinedine Zidane showed the world exactly why Aimé Jacquet had had faith in him. From a corner supplied by Emmanuel Petit, Zidane scored the goal the whole of France was waiting for.
Even if you do dream about it, think about it, want to do it, you tell yourself it's not possible. And that's why I said afterwards that in my life, nothing is going to be impossible anymore.
Stunned, the Brazilians push forward. But Ronaldo seems unusually detached. Then Zidane repeats the impossible, when in the 46th minute he scores again, and again, it's with a header. As half-time is called, Aimé Jacquet and Didier Deschamps are determined that the team's advantage is not lost by overconfidence. Memories of France's ignoble defeat against the Germans in 1982 loomed large.
Il faut jouer, hein, faut pas rester, hein. Faut pas jouer, il faut jouer profond quand même, hein. Faut percuter.
The manager, he came back and he said, "Will you all shut up in the dressing room, calm down, drink, take your socks off, your shoes, relax, legs up, things like this. Professional. Concentrate, focus on what you have to do in the second half. Then when the job is finished, then you can talk."
The second half begins with just 45 minutes separating France from victory. But within minutes, Desailly is booked. Yet the Brazilians looked as if they knew this wasn't their day. The troubled Ronaldo seemed close to despair. But then in the 68th minute, disaster strikes for the French.
I knew that behind Cafu there weren't any more defenders, which meant that if I could intercept the ball, I could go for goal on my own. I got a bit carried away by my excitement, by the dream of scoring a goal in the World Cup final, and I got caught up by my commitment to that.
Just like in 1958 against Brazil, France are down to 10 men.
The fear was that Desailly sending off was going to just provide Brazil with that opportunity that they needed. Down to 10 men, there wasn't a lot of time to hang on, but you just felt that if Brazil had been able to sneak a goal in, then the French could have just fallen apart.
But Jacquet had spent years training the team for an eventuality like this, and nothing was going to rock his defence. He knew that a French victory was now truly possible. History was being made. And then Emmanuel Petit put the icing on the cake in the 90th minute.
I was running two defenders and I saw the goalkeeper come to me. I didn't know that I'm going to score the goal, but they didn't really attack me. I think they gave up straight away. I don't have a lot of memories of that goals. The only memories I have, it's a shame because it's me.
The moment when Emmanuel Petit scored the third goal, I said then, it's over. And I said to my trainer, we're world champions. He says to me, we have been for a long time. You know, I never noticed when the whistle blew. I had a mental block. I don't remember anything more.
Je me souviens plus.
To win the World Cup. That's the dream of every little kid who love football. And then suddenly you are in your dream, in live. Normally in a dream or stuff like that, Before you're actually about to lift the cup or about to win, you wake up and you want to go back to sleep quick to see if you can catch the dream back, but it did happen.
As France were the hosts of the World Cup, it was the job of the president Jacques Chirac to award the cup. On the way to pick up the trophy, Captain Deschamps is congratulated by Michel Platini.
It's amazing. A privilege because I was the first. I was captain. You feel like stopping time so that everything stands still. It can't get any better than that. It's the result of an enormous effort and lots of hard work, and is a massive reward.
The final was seen by an estimated 25 million people in France alone, breaking all previous records. On the Champs-Élysées in Paris, more than 1 million people gathered in a massive outpouring of national euphoria. Similar scenes were witnessed across the country. With French flags and Algerian flags flying happily side by side, the victory was seen as a triumph for multicultural France. Zinedine Zidane was seen as the talisman of the French victory and became France's most popular Frenchman.
I went rapidly to the Champs-Élysées to participate in the streets. And when I saw the image of Zidane on Arc de Triomphe, I can't imagine how for me it was something so strong. For the people of my generation, Arc de Triomphe was the symbol of patriotic ceremonies. And for the first time, I saw the face of a man coming through his parents from Algeria. I don't find the words to express how I was happy, enthusiastic. For me, it was one of the most beautiful days of my life.
With the French victory of 1998, Aimé Jacquet and his team had proved their critics wrong. They had shown the world that France was a nation with the mentality to win. But more importantly, the French multicultural team had shown the country the rewards of racial harmony. But for how long would France listen?
Next Sunday, how Argentina became a football superpower, inspired by the genius of one man and his hand, Diego Maradona. More World Cup stories here, same time, 9 o'clock. And you can watch highlights of the French game as well as other historic World Cup matches at bbc.co.uk/World Cup. Next tonight on BBC Two.